Sponsored by Rabbi Shlomi and Mirala Greenwald. This is a Sicha from Likutei Sichos, Chelek Gimmel, Parshas Chukas, Sicha Beis, and the topic of the Sicha is that in this week's Parsha we learned the pasuk of Vayas Moshe Nechash Nechoshes, that Moshe made a copper snake to heal the Yidden who were bitten by the snakes, and we learned the teaching of Rashi on this pasuk. And there are three parts in the Sicha. The Rebbe will, number one, ask 4 questions on Rashi. Number 2, answer the 4 questions. And number 3, present the Yenushal Torah and Rashi, where in the level of Yenushal Torah we will see how everything in Rashi and in the pasuk fits perfectly. On the pasuk in our parsha, and this pasuk comes within the context of the story where the Yidden complained and spoke against Hashem and against Moshe, and their complaint was about the mun. And as a result, Hashem sent snakes that bit the Yidden, and many Yidden died. And then the Yidden came to Moshe and they confessed that they sinned by speaking against Hashem and speaking against Moshe. And they asked Moshe to daven to Hashem to remove the snakes. And Moshe davened to Hashem for the Yidden. And then Hashem said to Moshe that he should make for himself a snake, the form of a snake, and put it on a pole. And whoever was bitten by a snake and looked at the image of this snake that Moshe Rabbeinu would make would live. And so our pasuk says that Vayas Moshe Nechash Nechoshes, Moshe made a copper snake. Vayisimeu al hanes, he placed it on the pole. Vahoya im noshach hanachash es ish, and it was that if the snake bit a person, vihibit al nechash hanechoshes, and he gazed at this copper snake, v'chay, he would live. So on this pasuk, Rashi quotes the words nechash nechoshes, a copper snake, and Rashi explains loy nemar loy lasei shel nechoshes. It wasn't told to Moshe Rabbeinu to make it out of copper. Ela Omar Moshe. Rather, Moshe said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu kairei nachash. Hashem called it a nachash. V'ani esenu shel nechoshes. And I will make it of nechoshes, of copper. Because lashon neifel al lashon, the term nachash and the term nechoshes are similar to one another. And so Moshe Rabbeinu said he would make the nachash out of nechoshes, out of copper. Now, the simple meaning of what Rashi writes at the beginning, that loy nemar loy lasei shel nechoshes, that it wasn't told to Moshe to make it out of nechoshes, out of copper, is that the meaning of this is that Rashi is pointing out in the form of a question that in the pasuk it doesn't say that Hashem commanded Moshe to make it out of nechoshes. And so why did Moshe make it out of nechoshes? And to answer this, Rashi explains the reason Moshe made it out of nechoshes is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu kairei nachash v'ani esenu shel nechoshes lashon neifel al lashon, because the terms are similar, nachash and nechoshes. So in other words, the way we read Rashi is that there is over here a question and an answer. The way Rashi frames the question is by saying loy nemar loy lasei shel nechoshes. It wasn't told to Moshe to make it out of copper, and so the question is, why did he make it out of copper? And then we have the answer, Ela Amar Moshe. So we have over here a question and an answer. And there are 4 questions here. The first question is, we have to understand the lengthiness of Rashi that he writes, loy nemar loy lasei shel nechoshes. Ela v'chulu. That Rashi over here points out what the question is by saying Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't told to make it out of copper. So why did he make it out of copper? The difficulty is that it's not the way of Rashi to first state the difficulty in the pasuk, which he comes to explain and resolve. Rashi usually just explains the pasuk, and we have to figure out what the question in the pasuk is that Rashi is coming to explain. So what's the reason that over here Rashi writes out the difficulty? The second question is, and this is a continuation to the first question, where we asked that it's not the way and manner of Rashi to first state the difficulty in the pasuk and then give the answer to it. So this question is especially here, that the difficulty in the pasuk that loy nemar loy lasei shel nechoshes, that Moshe wasn't told to make it out of nechoshes, that difficulty in the pasuk is clearly understood from the words of the pasuk, the previous pasuk that only say Vayemer Hashem al Moshe aseh lecha sarif gamer. Hashem said to Moshe to make a sarif, and it doesn't say it should be out of nechoshes. So the difficulty in the pasuk is very obvious. So then the question becomes even greater. If Rashi generally doesn't say what the difficulty is, why does he say it here? And especially over here, where the difficulty in the pasuk is very apparent and obvious, and it's certainly not needed that Rashi should spell out what the difficulty is. The third question is, Rashi writes, Amar Moshe, Moshe said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu kairei nachash. Hashem called it a nachash, v'ani esanu shal necheshes, and I will make it out of necheshes, because lashon neifel al lashon. And the question is, but it clearly says in the pasuk that Hashem called it a saraf. Hashem did not call it a nachash. Hashem said, Asei lecha saraf, not Asei lecha nachash. And the fourth question is, why does Rashi explain the words nechash, necheshes, after he explains the words v'haya im nashach hanachash es ish v'hibit v'gemer, which these words come after it, because it says in the pasuk vayas Moshe nechash necheshes vayisimeu al hanes, and then it says v'haya im nashach hanachash es ish v'hibit al nechash hanacheshes v'chay. So why does Rashi first explain the later words in the pasuk of a haya im nashach hanachash es ish v'hibit v'gemer before he explains the words nechash necheshes? We're going to move straight into answering our questions, and we're going to begin with the main point of the answer and answering question number 3, which was that Hashem called it a saraf and not a nachash. So why does Rashi say that Moshe said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu kairei nachash, Hashem called it a nachash? So the explanation in this is as follows. Earlier, Rashi explained on the pasuk of Vayishlach Hashem Gamer, Eis HaNachashim HaSrafim, so Rashi explains the words HaNachashim HaSrafim, and he says, that they burn the person with the poison, with the venom of their fangs. Meaning that what Rashi is telling us over here is that the word hasrafim is a description of nechashim. It's an adjective. That the words nechashim hasrafim mean hanachashim shesarfim, the snakes that burn. And since when Hashem said to Moshe, Asei lecha saraf, he said it in continuation to Vayishlach Hashem Gomer Eis HaNachashim HaSrafim. So it's understood that the word saraf over here is like the word saraf earlier, that it's an adjective, it's a descriptive word, which comes from the word sreifa, and it's not a type of snake. Hashem wasn't saying Asei lecha saraf, make a certain type of snake called a saraf. And therefore, if the word saraf is an adjective, so you can't have an adjective without the word that it's describing. So we must say that what Hashem told Moshe was Asei lecha nachash saraf. And it's just that the pasuk says that Hashem said to Moshe Asei lecha saraf. But obviously what Hashem actually said to Moshe was Asei lecha nachash saraf. And so that answers our third question, that Hashem called it a saraf. The answer is Hashem did not call it a saraf. He called it a nachash saraf. And it's just that the pasuk says that Hashem said Asei lecha saraf. But in actuality, Hashem said Asei lecha nachash saraf. However, this creates a question, which is, why does the pasuk say that Hashem said Asei lecha saraf if what Hashem actually said was Asei lecha nachash saraf? And the explanation for the pasuk not saying clearly that Hashem said to Moshe Asei lecha nachash saraf, the explanation is as follows. And we're going to go to a sort of a general idea and then apply it over here. According to Pshuto Shel Mikra, it's understood that the Torah doesn't specify all the details of what Hashem told Moshe in each and every command. And as we indeed find many times, that a command of Hashem is written in general terms, and only afterwards, either when Moshe told it to the Yidden, or the Yidden fulfilled it, are there more details. So in other words, we'll see that Hashem commanded Moshe something to tell the Yidden, and then in the actual command of Moshe to the Yidden, or in the Yidden fulfilling the command, there are more details. So the Torah won't always tell us at the beginning all the details that Hashem gave over. Sometimes we'll only see those added details in the command that Moshe gave to the Yidden, or in the Yidden fulfilling the mitzvah. Meaning that since it's understood that Moshe didn't command or do anything on his own unless he heard it from Hashem, so certainly the added details in the Torah that are mentioned in the command of Moshe to the Yidden, or in the Yidden fulfilling the command, those added details were told to Moshe by Hashem when Hashem gave him the command, and they just aren't specified in the Torah. And now we could apply this idea over here. And similarly here, in the command of Hashem to Moshe, Hashem told him to make Asei lecha nachash saraf, corresponding to the punishment of Vayishlach Eis HaNachashim HaSrafim. And it's just that the Torah only says saraf, but we understand that what Hashem actually said to Moshe was Asei lecha nachash saraf. Now you could still ask further, why doesn't the Torah say the word nachash? Okay, we understand that obviously Hashem said aseh lecha nachash saraf, but is there a reason why it's not specified in the Torah? And the reason the Torah doesn't mention that Hashem said aseh lecha nachash saraf, the reason for that is the making of the nechashas, this copper snake, was to save the Yidden from the punishment of the nechashim masrafim. And since the punishment comes not from the nechashim themselves, but from the part that shesarfim es ha'adam, that they burn the person with the poison, with the venom of their fangs, so therefore only the main part of what Hashem said is written in the Torah, which is aseh lecha saraf. And especially, this answer is especially so since the Torah relies on what was just said, that Hashem sent the nechashim hasrafim, the nechashim shesarfim, so we can understand that also here Hashem said not just aseh lecha saraf, but aseh lecha nachash saraf. Now we're going to move on to answering question number 4, which was that the two Rashis are out of order. According to this, what we just said, it's also understood why Rashi teaches his explanation on the words V'haya im noshach hanachash es ish v'hibit v'gemer, which come later in the pasuk. He teaches his explanation on those words before teaching his explanation on the words nechashes, which comes earlier in the pasuk. Because according to what we just said, which was that even though it's not written in the Torah that Hashem told Moshe to make a nachash, it's understood that Hashem did tell it to him in his command. So then we can ask, how does Rashi know that loy nemar loy la'asosei shel nechashes, that Hashem didn't tell Moshe to make it out of copper? It can be that just like Hashem told Moshe to make a nachash, and it's just not specified in the Torah, so too Hashem told him to make it out of nechashes, and the Torah wrote it in short and didn't specify it. So Rashi can't say his explanation right away, because then we'll have a question on it. And so in order to reject this explanation, Rashi first says his teaching on the words, V'hoya im noshach hanachash ish v'hibit v'gemer. What does Rashi say over there? He says that Shaloi hoya memar noshach hanachash lisrapes, that the person who was bitten by the snake did not hasten to heal, Elohim kain mabed by bechavana, unless he gazed at the nachash saraf with intent. V'amar Rabbi Seinu, and our rabbi said, V'chi nachash meimis oy nachash mechaya, is it the snake that kills and is it the snake that gives a person life? What's the explanation over here? It's not the snake that does it. Ela bizman shahoy Yisrael mistaklim klape maila. Rather, the explanation is that when the Yidden looked upwards, and they were meshabed, they dedicated their hearts, they subjugated their hearts to their Father in heaven, then they would heal. And if not, they would waste away. Rashi says this first because this explains that the purpose of the nechashes wasn't to heal the Yidden, because then we can say that just like there's a reason, whatever it may be, to make it in the form of a nachash, so then there's a reason to make it out of nechashes. But rather, the purpose was to awaken the Yidden to look upwards and bring about that yishabdu libam l'shamayim. They should subjugate, they should dedicate their heart to Shamayim, to Hashem, so that Hashem should heal them. And for this purpose of the nachash, it doesn't matter what material it's made out of. And there's no reason to say that Hashem said to make it out of nechashes, and that it's just not written in the Torah. Now you can ask, then why does it have to be a nachash if the whole purpose is to look upwards? Whereas the benefit of making it in the form of a nachash is understood very simply. When the bitten person sees the very thing that harmed them, this itself awakens them to do tshuva for their sin. And especially here, where the punishment through a nachash was connected to the sin itself. Hashem sent the nechashim asrafim, and Rashi tells us, like Rashi taught, why was the punishment through the nechashim asrafim? Yavai nachash shalak ala itzaz diba v'yipare mimoitza diba. Let the nachash who was punished for using his speech in a not good way come and punish those who use their speech in a not good way, because the Yidden spoke badly about the mon. And Yavai nachash shekol aminin nitamin leitam echad v'yipare mikfuye teva shedavar echad mishtana lehem lekama matanimim. And let the nachash, who for him all things taste the same, let him come and punish those who were ungrateful, that for them one thing, the mun, changed to many tastes. And so it's understood that through looking at the Nachash, they were especially inspired to look upwards, l'shabed libam l'shamayim, to give themselves over to Hashem. And this is also a reason, according to what we just now, it adds a reason to something we said earlier. This is also a reason to say that in Hashem's command to Moshe to make the saraf, he also said Nachash, because the aspect of Nachash is very important, because that's what's going to inspire and awaken the Yidden. And so it strengthens this point that we said earlier, that in Hashem's command, he certainly said, Aseh lecha Nachash saraf. Now we're going to move on to answer the final two questions, which were questions number 1 and number 2, which both asked about the fact that Rashi points out what the difficulty is in the pasuk. And the questions were that Rashi doesn't typically point out what the difficulty in the pasuk is, and he especially shouldn't do that over here, where the difficulty is very obvious. So the answer to those two questions are as follows. After all this is explained from the teachings of Rashi, that Hashem did tell Moshe Rabbeinu to make a Nachash saraf, and we understand why Hashem told him to make the Nachash, and the significance and importance of it, how it awakened the Yidden and inspired the Yidden to look upwards and do tshuva. So then Rashi goes back to explain the words Nechash Necheshes, and he begins and says, Lo nemar lo laseis shel Necheshes. Hashem did not tell Moshe to make it out of Necheshes, out of copper, since there's no benefit in making it out of Necheshes. So Rashi is not pointing out the difficulty in the pasuk over here. He's just telling us a teaching. We thought that Rashi is pointing out the difficulty. So why did he make it out of Necheshes? But that's not what Rashi is saying here. Rashi is just saying a statement. He's telling us that based on everything we just learned, so we know that that Hashem did not tell Moshe to make it out of copper. And then Rashi continues, if that's the case, then the question arises, why did Moshe make it out of Necheshes? And it's so important that he made it out of Necheshes to the extent that the Torah informs us that he made it out of Necheshes. And therefore Rashi continues, Ella Omar Moshe, and here he doesn't articulate the question, he just goes straight into the explanation. Ella Omar Moshe, rather Moshe said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kair Nachash, Hashem called it a Nachash, V'ani aseu esenu shal Necheshes, so I will make it out of Necheshes, out of copper, because Lashon Neifel al Lashon, because the two terms are similar, and so they go together. So the way we read Rashi is not that he's pointing out the difficulty, but rather he's making a statement that based on what we learned till now, we could conclude that Lo Nemar Lo La'asosei Shel Necheshes, Moshe was not told to make it out of Necheshes. And then Rashi goes on to answer a question. If he wasn't told to make it out of Necheshes, so why did he? The reason is because Lashon Neifel al Lashon. And the Rebbe continues that this itself is also the reason the Torah informs us that Moshe made it out of Necheshes, to teach us this idea of Lashon Neifel al Lashon, that it's halacha l'maisa. And so from here we also know that Shema Milsahu, that the name of something is significant. It's not just a name that's applied to it and we use a different name, but rather the name of something is something which is important. And it's also been a L'Payel, and like the Rebbe references a story in the Yerushalmi where we see the name of a person related to their identity. And so that's the reason the Torah informs us that Moshe made it out of Necheshes, to tell us this idea that the word that's used for something is something of significance and importance. And if it's called a Nachash, so then it'll be made, Moshe Rabbeinu made it out of Necheshes, because the two terms are similar, and the fact that these terms are similar is something of importance and significance, and therefore Moshe would do something like that. And so we should also know that Shema Milsahu, the name of a person or the name of something, is something of significance and importance, and it's not just a name or a tag that's put onto it, and a different one could have been put on otherwise. From Yenishal Torah and Rashi, since the Torah tells us that Moshe made the Nachash out of Necheshes, so this itself is a proof that in Pnimis Inyanim, when we look at Torah on a deeper level, that also this detail, that it was made out of Necheshes, has a connection to the healing that came about through the Nachash. If the Torah tells us that it was a Nachash that was made out of Necheshes, that means that aspect, that detail, that it was Necheshes, is also relevant. And so this will be understood by first explaining the healing of the Yidden through the Nachash. Those who were bitten by the Nachashim, which kill with their bite, so since without the vehibit v'gemer v'choy, if they didn't gaze at the Nachash and as a result live, they would die. So it's understood that from looking at the bite of the Nachashim, they were dead. If we don't have anything new to intervene, they were dead. In addition to this, the Nachash itself represents the idea of death. Because as a result of the Chet Eitzadas, that was through the Nachash, death was brought into the world to the extent that the 4 people who didn't have any sin, it says that they died Be'ityo Shel Nachash. It's all because of the Nachash. So the Nachash represents death, and in this case, if not for the Vehibit V'Gemer V'Chay, they would die. So they were considered dead when we look at the bite of the Nachash. And therefore there has to be Vehibit V'Gemer V'Chay, which means to draw down Chayas to this person, because otherwise the person is dead. And so it's understood that those who were bitten by a Nachash and then V'Chay, they had a Me'ain of Tchias HaMeisim, because they would have otherwise died. Now it's known that the power to revive a dead person, the power for Tchias HaMeisim, cannot be from the level of Makar HaChayim, which is the source of life the way it is. Because once the Chayas left the body, it is unable to be drawn back down from the very same level in order to revive the dead person. Because from that level, the person is dead. But rather it's from the level of Rachamim Rabim, the Atzmos Ein Sof, where on that level, death and life are the same. And therefore, because on that level, death and life are the same, it's also able to revive a dead person. And this is the reason the healing of the Yidden was through V'hibit al Nachash HaNacheshes V'chay. Because since it was drawing down from Atzmos Ein Sof, where there death and life are the same, so it brought about the transformation from one extreme to the other extreme. That also the Nachash, which represents death, was transformed to life. And through looking at that Nachash, V'chay, they lived. And the drawing down of Atzmos Ein Sof to transform the Nachash, which represents death, to life, that it should be Nachash Mechaya, that is through the Avodah of Yidden, which is similar to what's being drawn down. The rule is that whatever a person wants to draw down, he has to do an Avodah that's similar to it. So if a person wants to draw down a limited energy, he does a limited Avodah. If a person wants to draw down a transcendent energy, a person has to do an Avodah where they transcend themselves. And in this case, this is the Avodah of what Rashi says, Yisrael mistaklim klapi maila, umishabdim is libam la'avim shabashamayim. That Yidden look upwards, and the mishabed libam, their hearts, to their Father in heaven. When we say libam, this means the whole heart, including the Yetzer Hara, which the Yetzer Hara is the Nachash in a person, that also the Nachash in the person is Meshubet Helakus, and it becomes actually the Chayas of Kedusha. And this creates the same effect in the world, that the Nachash, which represents death, transforms to be the source of life. Now, according to this, we could understand the connection between Necheshes and Nachash, because also Necheshes represents a level of Klippa. And so therefore, just like it came from the Nachash, that death was transformed to life, it was made out of Necheshes, which is Klippa, that's transformed to Kedusha. And this itself is the reason, actually, that Necheshes is related to the word Nachash. Because Lashon, Neifel al Lashon, and the name of the thing reflects its chayis, and Nachash is the idea of death, and it's a level of Klippa, and so to Necheshes is a level in Klippa. According to this, it's understood why it doesn't say that Hashem told Moshe, Asei lecha Nachash, even though HaKadosh Baruch Hu kairei Nachash, Hashem did call it a Nachash. It's explained regarding the Maimer Azal of Shalu l'Teira Chayta Ma'anshay. They asked the Torah, what's the punishment for someone who sinned? Amar lei Yavi Asham v'Yischaper lei. The Torah said he should bring a carbon and he'll be forgiven. Shalu l'Kadosh Baruch Hu Chayta Ma'anshay. They asked the Kadosh Baruch Hu, what's the punishment for someone who sinned? Amar lei Yasa Tshuva Yischaper lei. He said he should do tshuva and he'll be forgiven. And it's explained over there that it's not understood. Also, according to the response of the Torah, it also requires tshuva, since only then, with tshuva, does a carbon mechaper, does it atone? And the explanation is, according to the response of the Torah, the tshuva helps to make this dainas like shgagos. It makes the purposeful averis into averis that were done by mistake, inadvertently, and therefore it still requires a carbon, because that's what a carbon comes for. A carbon comes for a shogeg of an aver that was done by mistake, inadvertently. And that's the novelty of the response of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, that Yasa Tshuva v'Yischaper, that the Tshuva helps to fully atone for this dainas, that they're completely removed, and to the extent that they become zachiyos, they actually become considered mitzvahs. And the reason for this is because from the level of the Torah there are limits, and therefore the Tshuva doesn't have the ability to fully atone for this dainas. However, this is not so from the level of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who Hashem is above all limits. Because who will tell Hashem what to do? And even if a person has a lot of averis, it doesn't affect Hashem. And therefore, through tshuva, the Zdainis are transformed to Zachiyas. And similarly here, the command Aseilecha Nachash, which through it brought about that Vehibit V'Geimer V'Chai isn't written clearly in the Torah in order to hint that from the level of the Torah, the Zdainis, which is the Nachash and death, aren't transformed to Zachiyas life. However, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kairei Nachash. This means to say that the Koyach, that also the Nachash should be transformed to life, is drawn down from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who gave the Torah and who is higher than the Torah.